Hi, everyone. We're just waiting for a couple more people just to show up, but welcome to our Manga and Webtoons Explained. Know the formats, find the readers, and it's presented by Carolyn. Just give people a couple of minutes to get into the screens and get everybody settled. So welcome. And before we begin, I'd just like to introduce Carolyn. Carolyn's our presenter today. She's our graphic novel expert. And I say that because she really is unbelievably knowledgeable. She's been with Whitehots selecting graphic novels for just a bit over 13 years, so she knows what she's talking about. Um, she Her knowledge and everything that she knows about graphic novels helps libraries and helps librarians build strong, high circulating collections. So if you ever have any questions or if you're ever wondering what would work for your library, you can reach out to Carolyn. You will see her information at the end. There's a slide that has her information. You can reach out to her and talk to her. And just to let you know, there will be time for questions at the end. So if you think of something while the webinar is happening, write it down, and then at the end you can use the chat to ask, and we will have some time to answer your questions. So without further ado, here's Carolyn.
Hi, good evening, afternoon. As we mentioned before, this is about a webinar that's going to be about manga and webtoons. Hopefully, we'll give you some information on the formats and will allow you to find the readers. Just a brief introduction to let you know what we will be dealing with. It's just basically the just some key points on the evolution of manga and webtoons, some key genres and age levels, current market trends and titles to watch out for. And the final part will deal with ideas to use manga and webcomic to drive engagement. Now, the big question is why this matters for libraries. Basically, we are talking about engaging young readers. The fan bases of both webcomics and manga are both young, very young. I'll get into more details on this later. There's also the circulation rate, especially with manga. Manga, I say, uses the Scheherazade method. By ending things on a cliffhanger, readers get hooked into reading a series. So if they read the first volume, they're likely to read the rest. We're also talking about diversity, not only with regards to the creators, but also the audience. With web comics, we're talking about an international audience of creators and an international creator base, but also it's not just we're not just looking at borders. If you're looking for women, transgendered, or non-binary creators, about 40% of this group will work exclusively on web comics. This is only true about 15% of male creators, and this points to possible problems with editorial and gatekeeping in the publishing world. And we're also talking about books that are perfect for reluctant readers. They're the perfect high-low books. These books are for high interest and low reading levels. They're often called the gateway drugs to reading. People can practice reading with them, and through repetition, they develop fluency. In Japan, they often use manga to help children learn kanji, or the Chinese character used in Japanese script. Now, let's go start off with manga. Manga is basically Japanese comics or graphic novels. Manga comes from the two characters man, whimsical, and ga, pictures. Now, they're typically serialized in magazines before collected in print collections, and they format-wise, they tend to read right to left. The manga industry in Japan is the largest comic industry in the world. It's second to none. It's worth around 675 billion annually. The top 4 comic publishers in the world are Japanese. They pump out around 1.9 billion volumes per year. That breaks down to about 15 books per person in Japan. The largest magazine in Japan is Weekly Shonen Jump with a circulation of 1.3 million copies per week, but this is a fraction of the 5.6 million it hit at a peak in 1995. Now, in North America, the first translated manga was Barefoot Gen. This was translated by fans who wanted to spread the story of a Hiroshima survivor. It tends to go in and out of print North America, but it is a classic of the genre. In the 80s and 90s, publishers like Viz and Dark Horse started publishing manga. But the first big hit was in the late 90s with Pokemon, with over 1 million copies sold. In the 2000s, this fueled a somewhat of a boom fueled by Tokyo Pop. They picked up licenses for dozens and dozens of copies, and one of the things that they did was unflip manga and print them in smaller volumes. The cheaper price point and then the variety of titles they offered showed that there was almost an insatiable market out there. There was a bit of a crash in 2008 when Japanese publishers started taking back control, and that's why you see publishers like Kodansha, Square Enix enter into the market. Today, 76 of all North American graphic novels are manga volumes. That's a change from the early 90s where DC and Marvel had over 50% of the market. France used to be the second largest market for manga outside of Japan, but it's actually been surpassed by America in 2025. And to consider how young this fan base or pool is, we have more Gen Zs watching anime, 42%, than follow the NFL. So yes, very young, very insatiable. Um, Now there are five basic core categories. I'll go into more detail when I'm using the examples. The first is Kodomo, which is basically for children. Shonen, which is for teen boys. Shoujo for teen girls. Seinen for adult men, and Josie for adult women. They're aimed at age groups because they were serialized in magazines, and publishers were basically selling these demographics to advertisers. Now, going into the suggested series. Kodomo, as I mentioned earlier, it's aimed at children, and not surprisingly, there are tie-ins with video games and toys. Some notable Kodomo titles in North America are Splatoon, Pokemon, and Minecraft. Now, for the first book, you know him, and all the kids love him. It's Captain Underpants, the first epic manga. Scholastic lists this at 7+. It's written and adapted by Dave Plinky. It's an adaptation of the first Captain Underpants book, 25th anniversary. The artist Motojiro has been a manga artist for 30 years, and he is currently part of the Japanese Cartoon Association. This one is like Unico, the manga that Scholastic also publishes, that reads right to left. It's in full color, and it pairs well with Dave Plinky's other works that you may know, like Dogman, Captain Underpants. If there's any title that I know people want to see, it's going to be this. It should 100% be on your radar. The title next to it is another Kodomo-like manga. It's also from Scholastic. The creator Shogo Aoki has worked in Japan since 2015, mostly on Square Enix titles. It deals with it's sort of like a parallel universe where the shogunate still runs Japan. And in this story, Kingpin flees to Japan to become the governor of Edo, and hot on his trail are Peter Parker, Miles Morales, and Gwen Stacy, better known as Spider-Man and the Ghost Spider. And it's a mixture of Marvel and Japanese culture. It goes perfectly, though, with the Scholastic's other Spider-Man series. You may know them as the Miles Morales, the Gwen Stacy, the Spider-Ham, as well as Marvel's Spider-Man titles rated teen. Marvel is one of the more conservative raters, so teen titles are usually good for a wider range of audience and are appropriate for most readers. It's more like the equivalent of PG. Now, the title next to it is a perfect example of shonen. These are aimed at young male readers. It is the most popular category in manga. These stories often focus on an action adventure and the struggles of growing up. Some of the shonen magazines often have mottos. For example, like Shonen Jump, the largest magazine out there. The motto is friendship, effort, and victory. You can see that reflected in their series like Dragon Ball, Demon Slayer, One Piece, and Slam Dunk. Space Walking with You won the Manga Teshiro Prize in 2004. It's an award for manga with 8 volumes or less. It's the third most recommended manga by bookshop employees in Japan for 2025. In industry polls, it was a top shonen series. There are currently 5 volumes in Japan, 2 in North America. The story is about 2 boys. Kobayashi has problems studying and feels as though he's about to drop out. And when he's at his lowest, he meets Yuno, who's a new student at school. Yuno seems a little bit naive, and he's always scribbling in a journal. When some bullies run off with Uno's journal, Kobayashi gets a book back to him, and he finds out why the journal is important to Uno. Apparently, Uno's been using it to help him navigate social situations. It has step-by-step instructions on how to deal with people and unexpected things that might happen to him. The story doesn't say it outright, but it's heavily implied that Uno is autistic. And like all good buddy comedies, the friendships forces both of them to grow. Kobayashi slowly learns to actually try and try in school, and Uno actually breaks out more of his shell and learns to actually enjoy engaging with people instead of like the step-by-step route that he's been taking. This graphic novel, this manga series actually pairs well with manga about social anxiety and autism and bullying, which is out there. Like you could pair this perfectly with Komi Can't Communicate or Silent Voice, two classics of the genre. Next, we're going from shonen to its counterpoint shoujo. These are usually series aimed at young girls and teenagers. The word is actually derived from a Meiji era term. It refers to the period between childhood and marriage. If you're curious about what big series are out there, you might know some like Sailor Moon and Cardcaptor Sakura. No surprise, relationships and genders are big themes in these books. The one I have right now is Fall in Love, You False Angel. It was winner of the Kodansha Award for the shoujo category in 2025. It's a debut series from Koko Uguzaki, and it's a romance with a slightly serious theme. The lead female, Otogi, has grown up believing that she has to play up to what people want her to be in order for her to be loved. And then she becomes the perfect student, beautiful, polite, smart, but deep down, she's a little more rougher, a little more angry, not as perfect. When she ends up being harassed by a group of boys on a train, she ends up swearing at them and and starts cursing at them to get them to leave her alone. And she's horrified to find out she has just exposed herself to the other paragon or perfect person at school, who's Toki, the vice president, the guy she has a bit of a crush on. But it turns out that Toki isn't as angelic as he appears either, and he rather likes the real Otogi. And it seems a little fluffy, but like a lot of shoujo manga, I feel like she actually drops a few serious issues and situations into it. Like in the second chapter, you actually deal with a student being sexually harassed by a teacher, and it circulates like it has started already. There's a few volumes out, and it tends to circulate well for a shoujo manga without an anime, and it pairs well with series like, if you have it at your library, Kaguma-san, Love is War, the series that was co-created by the co-creator of Oshinoko. Okay, and now we are breaking from childhood or teenage to the more adult manga. Seinen translates to youth, but it's basically for adults around 18 to 40. It boomed in the late 60s when young manga readers were looking for something a little more meatier to read. The first big hit was probably Lupin the Third. These series often have mature content, so you're looking at potential sex, violence, and literary ambition in there. Dogs Red, it's about redemption in hockey. It's by the creator of Golden Kamui, which won the Osamu Tezuka Cultural Prize. And as you can see, it's about hockey. The main character, Rue, is a figure skater who gets kicked out of the sport for throwing a chair on the ice during a competition. Not nice, but he was having a rough time since his mother had just died. Still wanting to compete, he joins a local hockey team, and he doesn't know how to play, but he doesn't know how to skate. And so the series is about him learning the basics about hockey. In the first volume, they reference a lot of hockey players like Sidney Crosby, although funny enough, they do misspell his name. There's no anime, but it just might be a matter of time. If you look at something similar, Blue Lock started in 2018, but it took 4 years to get an anime, and once that happened, it sort of took off. It fits well with other sports manga like Slam Dunk and previous mentioned Blue Lock. It's rated 16 plus, but it should be fine content wise to fit in with teens. I think they're just being a little cautious because it was originally serialized in a seinen magazine. And now next to it is the female counterpart, Josie. These are titles aimed at adult young women, often in their early 20s. It bloomed in the 80s and 90s with magazines like Young You, Feel Young, and Young Rose. One of the pioneers is Kyoko Okazaki's, and some of her work, Pink, Helter Skelter, River's Edge perfectly captured the time and the weird mix of hedonism and naivety. I often compare her to if Brent Easton Ellis or Tama Janowitz actually wrote manga, they'd probably write something like Kyoko Okazaki's work. This genre imploded a bit in the last decade, although there's still creators around like Fumi Yoshinaga. My Twisted Eating Disorder is by Nagata Kabi. She's best known for the book My Lesbian Experience with Loneliness. That title won a number of awards and sparked a mini trend in autobiographical manga from Seven Seas. They started publishing things like on ADHD, neurodivergence, terminal cancer, gay marriage. And Nagata Kabi is known for a series of autobiographical comics about her life, dealing with dating, drinking, and this one deals with her eating disorder, which happens to be bulimia. It fits in with a lot of autobiographical confession or I novels from Japan, like No Longer Human, where writers don't flatter themselves as much as they tell the unvarnished truth. But this also, because it's the unvarnished truth, it pairs well with autobiographical comics from Japan and North America, like from Alison Beschel, Joe Matt, Chester Brown, and Robert Crumb. Okay, now that we're dealing with comics with readers in the millions, we're going to go to one which has readers in the billions. Slight exaggeration, but you'll see. Now we are dealing with web comics. This web comics and webtoons are basically changing how readers consume stories, and the key shifts now are publishers and writers actually directly able to contact readers, and the digital accessibility has surged global readership. Now, let's start the basics. Early web comics, the first one was basically Witches and Stitches. This was back in 1985. The guy was basically uploading it directly to CompuServe. And so with the web, the beginning of the early web, you have web comics. Digital communities grew until the 2000s, where people learned that they could actually make a living from this. Girl Genius, which won 3 Hugo Awards, initially started off being sold in comic book stores, but Phil and Kaja Foglio eventually put everything online and actually managed to make a living through selling their comic books that way. We look at Kate Beaton. Her career started off with the webcomic Hark a Vagrant, which is still available online. It democratized storytelling, allowing independent creators to build global audiences. So, the biggest platform, we are looking at Webtoons. It's South Korean in origin, and it's considered the TikTok of comics because of the vertical screening ability, but also because of how many people actually read it on phones. It devastated the traditional print medium in Korea, but actually revitalized it. And so it's grown. It's enormous. You're looking at 125 annual views, around 10 million readers a day. The readers are also extremely young. You're looking at 75% of them are under 25 years old. You're also looking at largely female readership. 64% are female readers. And the creators, 42% of them are women. With inside Webtoons, there are basically two sort of creator types. There's Canvas, which allows self-publishing. You retain full rights. You can post whenever you want. A good example of this is Heartstopper. It has currently 589 million views, and it's just restarted again. Another perfect example of the originals where it gets selected by editors. Often it's a Canvas story that gets picked by the editors. You get paid to post, but you have to stick to a schedule, and you'll often get editorial points. And Webtoons itself may buy up to 49% of the intellectual rights. A perfect example of this is Lore Olympus, which has currently 1.4 billion views. It's rumored that some of the original creators are actually making $9 million a year, which is, how do they make it? Well, through monetization, ad supported, or they'll often give you a few teaser chapters, and then you have to either see ads or pay to read with coins that you have to purchase. Currently, they're also trying to cash in and publishing their titles. They have their own sort of publishing site, which is Webtoons Unscrolled, but they've also developed partnerships with a Random House, which has now titles in Ink Lore and in Ink Pop. There's titles being published in HarperCollins and Scholastic, and the as noted before, you're looking at a young readers who are passionate about the format already, and they are seemingly transitioning over to the published editions. Like with regards to Laura Olympus, they are publishing over 500,000 copies for the first prints on her volumes. Okay, so I've broken down some new webtoons that I think you should keep an eye on. I broke it down to the basic age groups. So the juvenile around 8 to 12, the first title I like to highlight is Hooves of Death. It's basically unicorns versus zombies. Sounds weird, but there's 26.9 million views of the series. And for a small plot summary, it's basically about a world ravaged by zombies, and humanity is basically saved by unicorns. They are now safely living in Yellowstone National Park, but a unicorn, Sergeant Glitter, volunteers to go out looking for food. And what he finds is actually a survivor, Kate, who has the secrets to ending the zombie apocalypse once and for all. And they end up having an adventure. This pairs well, I think, with horror graphic novels, but also ones I would keep an eye out for the ones that have elements of cuteness and horror, like Death and Sparkles, which pairs death and a unicorn, or Five Nights and Freddy's, or this might be a little out there, but Junji Ito's Cat Diary, where he deals with the horrors of owning a cat. Speaking of cat, the next title is called Safi, the One-Eyed Cat. It's just basically a comedic slice of life, but it also has 152 million views on Webtoons. It doesn't sound much, but it goes perfectly with the dozens of cat manga and graphic novels out there. You can actually, I think, with this title, you can use, and all the other juvenile titles in YA, you could literally create a wall or a display of graphic novels that run from juvenile to adults, because it seems like everyone likes cats. A small segue, and I want to talk about the weirdest cat manga I know. It's called Night of the Living Cats. It's about like Night of the Living Dead, except you get scratched, you turn into a cat. Still reading that one. Now the teen titles here are kind of interesting because they both fall in love in the boy love genre. Now the appeal of that genre, like for women, is that often they say that it's because you can experience a romance without the gender issues getting involved. So all you have is like the relationship of two individuals, and you get to admire that. The appeal of the genre is growing, though. Currently, one of the top movies on HBO Max is Heated Rivalry, about two hockey players who happen to fall in love. Interesting enough, one of the creators on that actually worked on Shoresy and Letterkenny. Okay, so Always Raining Here is by two Canadian creators, Hazel and Bell. They're both from the lower mainland of BC. It has currently 5.8 million views. And it looks like it's a Canvas original because they own the rights. They redid a little bit of the art for the comics, and it's a standalone adaptation. So if you're worried about being forced to now carry dozens of volumes, you could just have this. It's basically a sweet story about two boys who end up falling in love, high schoolers. The title underneath it is actually, if you can believe it, it's very, very, very popular. It's To the Stars and Back. Currently, they have 149 million views. The creator, Peglo, is Korean, and on Webtoons, it's one of the top 10 slice of life comics on the website. And there's about 1 million subscribers, and there's still more people subscribing. And it's an awkward, heartwarming romance between an introvert and a bubbly extrovert. And needless to say, both these series will appeal to readers who loved Heartstopper. For the adult titles of Swamp and Sea, there is about 18.4 million views. It is a romantasy. Yes, romantasies have gone into Webtoons in a big way. The main character in this series, Mercy, hires a monster hunter, Jonah, to kill a mist wolf. But in trying to hunt the beast down, it ends up binding onto her. And so the mission for Mercy and Jonah now changes to them trying to find a cure for her condition. But along the way, they fall in love, but Mercy is not sure if it's her human side or her wolf side that loves Jonah. There are 5 volumes here, and it's going to be published per season, with the final one coming out in the winter 2027. The title underneath it isn't a webtoon, Heaven's Official Blessing. That was first sort of serialized on the Chinese website Bilibili. There are currently 2 seasons of it on animation on Crunchyroll. It's the graphic novel adaptation of the web novel with the same name. There are 8 volumes. It came from 7 Seas. This one is coming, though, from Random House. The title is Dan Mei, or a boy love book. Um, Dan Mei is borrowed from the Japanese term tanbi, or BL, or boys love. It's kind of sad. It's in China. There's been a crackdown in recent months because of it depicts homosexuality, which is considered taboo. And but it's strangely enough, it may be one of the few cultural products from China that has gained a foothold outside of the country. The novel this comic is adapted from, Heaven's Official Blessing, actually hit the New York Times bestsellers list. When we're talking about cultural exchanges, this may be one that fits the mold, because the book is steeped in Chinese culture. There's like people often say they admire the lore of the series, but the lore is actually Taoism and Chinese folklore. The title itself fits into the genre xianxie. My apologies for if I butcher the language, or immortal heroes. The main characters are often gods who have supernatural abilities that are on a quest on Earth. For this series in particular, the main character is banished from heaven 3 times. He's been lifted up, dropped back down, lifted up, dropped down, and this is the third time he's dropped down to Earth. And now he has to walk the Earth hunting ghost. It's on his adventures he ends up meeting a mysterious ghost who's been actually paying attention to him for a long time. I haven't read the novel myself, confession, but everyone I know who has loves it. It's one of those stories you end up crying multiple times. The story itself isn't explicit, but it's an explicit. Although I heard there's some extra chapters at the end that they did fan service, but it's not part of the main storyline. This graphic novel itself is in full color. It's a visual treat. It's probably one of the most beautiful graphic novels I've ever seen, and it pairs well immensely with other Dan May novels that are being published in North America. Now, with knowing this, we are now going to talk about collection development tips, because basically the audience is there. I think the most important thing, especially at libraries, is let people know that you actually hold these books. It's easy to curate by age group or accessibility. Because of the diversity of voices, you can create lists with LGBT, neurodivergent, anything anything out there. Because there's both print and also digital access, you can use that to draw readers. Because there's so much pop culture tied in both, it's easy to create displays that tap into this. Um, the reader engagement ideas, I think, are perfect for people who are already a little into anime or webtoons, just to let them know that your library will carry and have these items for them. The first one is about page to screen adaptations. Like there's a lot of anime adapted from manga, Netflix series that are adapted from webtoons, especially if you're looking at the Korean series. You could watch the first episodes or the first volumes and compare storytelling and character arcs. This is perfect for titles like One Piece, where Netflix ended up using the first 11 volumes of the series, or Hellbound, which was originally written as a web comic and then turned into a series for Netflix, or Full Metal Alchemist, where they actually had 2 different series, one that adheres closely to the manga and the other that does not. The second idea also deals with getting teens to actually create their own webcomic, but it doesn't have to be teens. It just has to basically be anyone 13 and above. You can talk about using the basics of vertical storytelling or hand-to-hand character design. You can help them upload onto Canvas and then showcase completed comics in the library or on social media. The creative display ideas here, I think, are perfect for readers who haven't read or are interested in manga, but might develop an interest if you could get them to read something, or take an interest. You can include for beginner friendly manga, it's easy to include the first volume and include easy reads like shonen and shoujo. Those tend to appeal to not just teens but to adults as well. Short descriptions like great ideas for first time manga readers, and you can add a sign about letting people to know to try to start here. You can actually package cozy mangas and webtoons, spotlighting soft and comfortable, heartwarming stories. Like, for examples we just discussed, is like Safi, the One-Eyed Cat, or Fall in Love with You, False Angels. You can use warm colors or cute icons or chibi characters as decorations. You could also highlight series that can be read in one sitting. Like there are some excellent single volume mangas like Goodbye Area, or Look Back, or short series like Pluto or Everything is Fine. These these books would fit the sign that says low commitment and high entertainment. You can even highlight books that deal like I highlight friendship here because I think manga has an interesting view of them. Um the difficulties of trying to break out of your shell. You have stories like Spacewalking with You and Or Komi Can't Communicate, which was a surprise hit for I think for everyone. Um, so much so that the publisher Viz has actually created a self-help book, Komi Can't Communicate, Making Friends and Not Scaring People. And there are other titles like Silent Voice that deals with bully or social anxiety, like Shino Can't Say Her Name. Now we are talking about resources and further reading. First place I hope you stop off at is at the Whitehots, the manga and graphic novel selections. We put a link, I believe, at the end with the email about the titles that I specifically highlighted. You could also check out Webtoons, check out their Canvas and the originals or Book Manager. The publisher websites for manga I find are fairly good with telling you what the age range I think of that or what the publisher puts down on them. I think titles like Seven Seas is the best, probably letting people know what the age ranges are. Viz is a little late. They'll wait until the books are published or a couple months before letting, especially if it's new series, to let you know what the age range. And I hope though that you will use me as your final resource. I love talking about graphic novels. If you have any questions, or if you need any help in compiling lists, or if you need anything, please feel to let me know. I'm always happy to talk to people.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Okay.
As usual, Carolyn's knowledge of graphic novels is unmatched. Honestly, there's nothing else that I can say. If you have questions, if you're curious about how to display what you do have, you could even like let her know which collections you already have and how those would pair with others. So if you have a collection and it's not going out, but you think it's something that really needs to be displayed, get in touch with Carolyn, and then she can tell you which ones to pair it with, or what even if it's not a graphic novel. So you can go with, oh, you like this as a fiction book, maybe you'd like this as a manga, right? So there's a whole bunch of ideas there that we can work with, and Carolyn is a great resource for that. If anybody has any questions, you could just put them in the chat. That would be great, and then we can go and answer them. I will open up my chat to make sure that I can see the questions. But while we're waiting, I had a question for Carolyn.
Mhm.
For libraries with limited budgets, because as we know, sometimes not everybody has the money to buy all of the series, what would you recommend prioritizing? So is it popular long running manga series, or short webtoon print editions, or new releases? Like what do you, if you had a limited budget, how would you tell a library to spend that money?
I would say popular series. One of the problems with short series, especially with regards to manga, is that they never caught on to readers in general. Especially with manga, there's a lot of pressure to um have a series run for a fairly long time. So you know that these are initially popular, like these titles will circulate. I was thinking about something like One Piece. I understand it's 100 plus volumes. I would not. It's hard justifying putting that much self space or money on that. But there are series like Spy times Family, which are 15 volumes, or you could even start if you want. You could just put the first few volumes of One Piece at your library. It will circulate. Um,
So do you recommend that you
it's
you absolutely have to start at the beginning though, right? Like you can't.
I
I, I
you
mean,
you could
I think they're at 111 volumes for
yes
One Piece. I think that's where they're at now.
yeah,
So is
but
it is it better to have the first 10?
I would say so. One of the funny things is that readers are more likely to pick the first few volumes, and then slowly, slightly drift off afterwards. But they would the first like of all these series, usually the first few volumes are the most popular.
Right. So
Um,
we had somebody comment, I bought
okay,
One Piece after this webinar last year, and it was a lot, but circulation is doing well. So thank
yeah,
you, Jen, for that. It's always helpful to hear that people are
yeah,
liking the suggestions that Carolyn is making,
yeah.
for
I
sure.
I can
That's
I can understand like it is 100 volumes, but if the majority of the volumes are are circulating, it's not going to take up the entire space. Like you can get like series where all the volumes are going out. Like if you want a short series, Spy Times Family is perfect. It's 15 volumes. I'm almost guaranteed almost all of them will go out. Same thing with Blue Lock. It's starting to get up there. It's getting into the 30s, but it's extremely popular. In most libraries, all the volumes are out. It's yeah, Blue
So
Lock.
I have one more question. How can librarians evaluate age appropriateness for manga and webtoon titles? So especially when ratings vary by publisher. So is there a way for librarians to have a quick, oh, I know what, I
Yeah.
know what age group this is going to hit or something like that. What do you suggest?
Yeah. You could use the publisher's sort of age rating as almost like the starting point. Lately, I've noticed they tended to go a little conservative, but they do vary from place to place. Ultimately, the easiest thing to do is to kind of read a few chapters. It's easiest to do with webtoons because it's out there. What manga publishers probably don't want you to know is you could potentially do the same. If you are on the fence about a series, you could do the same with regards to manga. A lot of fans often put fan translations online, and you could just read the first few. But a company like Viz usually just offers the first few chapters. So if you could use the publisher's age rating as the base, and then check out the first few chapters online. Viz usually just has it up there, so it's probably the easiest. Other ones are kind of like fan translations that you could potentially check out.
I think the best
Yeah.
solution is to just get in touch with you.
Oh
Ask
yes,
you what
that's true.
ask you, hey Carolyn, like we're thinking of getting
Yes.
this, or this was a suggestion by one of our
Yeah.
patrons. What do you think? Like those are the kinds of questions that Carolyn is more than happy to answer. So
Yeah.
please feel free to reach out. And the, do we have time for one more question, Carolyn?
Sure.
Are there specific genres or formats within manga and webtoons that tend to perform really well? Like are there, like you mentioned some series, but is there sort of like the type that does better than others for mangas?
Yeah, I would say generally of all the five categories, I'd say shonen titles. Um, I think there's still a little bit of a barrier to get guys to read like the girl comics, but almost everyone reads shonen titles.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, you have the biggest titles there as well, like Dragon Ball. Everyone, like if you mention like One Piece, it's a shonen title. Um, and they tend to, yeah, they tend to get the most attraction and attention. um Shoujo is slightly less, it's less popular, let's be honest, and seinen is a little bit more popular than josie.
Right.
Yeah, with regards to web comics, like the ones with deal with like are like the fall and the heartstopper sort of genre is very popular.
Good.
Yeah.
It's good to know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when we're talking, because I think webtoons is a bit of something new for people. So it's really easy. I did it myself. You just go on webtoons and you can
Yeah.
just take a look at some of the popular comics, or you just play around with it, and then once you're familiar with it, then maybe you can introduce it to the patrons in a teen club.
Yeah.
If you have the teens around, then it's a great place for them to for you to show them what it looks like. And
Yeah.
then sometimes having that, like Carolyn said, so having that club where you read it in print and then you watch an anime or something like that,
Yes.
I think is a great idea. So I think
Yeah.
that's it for us. I don't see any other questions or comments. So again, if you have any questions, you can reach out to Carolyn. That's her email right there. And thank you, Carolyn. It was very informative once again, and we hope to do these more. Stay tuned for anybody here. We will be doing one with Nicole Greening for kids in February. So you'll see that coming soon, and that'll be another webinar. But we hope to do more of these, especially with Carolyn, because graphic novels is a whole other world. So thank you, Carolyn. We really appreciate it. And thank you for everyone who joined us. Have a good afternoon.
Goodbye.